This is the Tombigbee Tales podcast. I'm Shannon Evans, and I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus. Today, I'm here with another member of my Tombigbee Tales team who is going to sit here, and we're just going to relax, and we're going to do this the way we always do. We just kind of brainstorm, and we talk about the things that make us go, huh, and try and figure out what the heck is going on and why, and how we can make it better here. We are both fifth generation native Mississippians. Our family has been here forever. Her family has been here forever. And so we are really concerned and we really care about this town. So today, I have a couple of things I'd like to bring up. And as you notice, my other team member has a bit of an accent. So she doesn't exactly say y'all a lot. So hey, partner, how you doing?
Not bad. Yourself?
I'm well, thanks. So one of the things I want to talk about is, because I just find it so funny, is the fact that the CVB has owned not one, but two double-decker buses that have come from the UK. They've come from London. And I know that's a London thing, so I find it all very amusing. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I'm used to seeing them. I've seen them all my life and growing up in Britain and in other countries, but I haven't seen any in the US, although apparently there's some on the West Coast and New York City, but I didn't think it was a Mississippi thing. And I just find it a bit strange. And I pity the poor drivers that have to drive them because they're not used to driving right-hand drive vehicles. I
True.
hope they're not shift as well.
Well, the interesting thing to me is that, I mean, the new one cost them $45,000 or almost $50,000 by the time they had the paint, the custom paint that says Visit Columbus on it. And we right now, since we don't have any real tourism that's coming to town, I'm not sure when and where they plan to use this bus. I know it's been rented out for a couple of weddings recently, which I think is fine and a good way to use it, but because they do need running. The previous one stayed in the shop all the time. I think they've now sold it. I'm not certain. Last I saw it was sitting in a yard over near the sheriff's department, unprotected from the elements. So the new one, I I hope they have a better place for it and it's better cared for. And I hope they have a plan in place. I didn't see anything in the budget to anticipate repairs, care, and feeding of a double decker.
Right, because yeah, I mean, going by the price that you just quoted, that's a second-hand bus, so it'll rust very easily in the humidity in Mississippi, and maybe that's one of the issues with the previous bus, and it does need to be better protected. It's not
Well,
really the best state or best place for a double-decker bus that's been imported from Britain.
yeah, I kind of giggle because I'm thinking, do you know, I don't know of any places around here that can really handle any repairs except for maybe the truck and tractor place, Waters Truck and Tractor locally. But can you imagine Joe Bubba working on it going, well, I ain't never seen an engine like this before. Some somehow it just doesn't, I don't know. Just the whole image of it just is just hilarious.
Yeah, I just find it a bit strange. It's culturally inappropriate, I think, actually.
I agree. I do think that's true. Is that cultural appropriation? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're Scottish. You tell me.
Well, maybe it's culturally appropriated from the West Coast, but
Perhaps,
it
perhaps.
doesn't really line up with politics either, does it? Let's
No,
face it.
not really. What I think is funny is there's a an article in the newspaper, and then there is the from the previous bus, and that the current CVB director, Nancy Carpenter, was accused of using the bus to go along and trim the crepe myrtles that overhang the road in front of her house. And she said that was so that the bus could get down the road. I'm not sure why that poor guy was standing in the bus doing the hedge trimming, but But apparently,
Wow. Wow.
apparently, are you there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay. So,
totally.
so, so apparently, what's the funniest thing was that the driver was in the bus, of course, waiting and slowly, moving the bus along so they can trim the overhanging crepe myrtles. And and apparently somebody must have come down the road that they didn't want seeing them trimming the bushes in front of her house from the top of the double decker. So they took off with the poor yard man on top, hanging on for dear life, falling backwards, hanging on to loppers. And
Ooh.
just the image of that, even if it's, I mean, there's probably some truth in the middle somewhere, but I mean, it was
Yeah.
enough of it that it was covered by the local newspaper, and that people question the ethics of that. It just leads to just, I mean, just the image of that is just hilarious.
That's just yeah. Yeah. She should have paid for somebody to bring their own vehicle and do all this and pay for the hire of a cherry picker or whatever.
Uh,
That's just
It's just it's just the silliness and the hubris of it that is just amusing to me.
I mean, this is why I got interested in the whole thing in the first place. Is I can't stand people lying, I can't stand people deceiving people, and I can't stand misappropriation of funding. And I'm seeing all of that here, and that's why I started digging.
Well, tell me some of the things you found recently that have really piqued your interest, and some things that you think we should make sure we dig into more and in our exploratory of this topic.
Well, there's lots, too much. There's too many things to mention, really, of all the things that I've noticed. But I'll perhaps give you a couple of bullet points. Um, I mean, I'm interested in the accounting records and budget spreadsheet for 2018 and 19 because I want to know where $700,000 of cash disappeared to, in addition to all the additional loans that were apparently taken out. Yeah, again, transparency. Um, I would also I kind of want to know why the board never insisted all these years on actually seeing the bank transactions. But it sounds like people just thought it was okay. I don't know.
Well, the board's lawyer at the time, for some reason, he was always protecting Nancy. The previous board attorney was a guy named Chris Hemphill, and then there was also another attorney on the board, who was named DeWitt Hicks. Now, DeWitt has now passed. Chris Hemphill is still an attorney in town. And they told when the board members asked to see ledgers and contracts and things like that, they were told they weren't allowed to see it. They were just supposed to rubber stamp whatever herself wanted to buy in
I
the name
have
of the CVB.
I'd
It
have
was,
huge issues with that. One and two, Chris Hempel resigned about less than a year after he was appointed. So I'm wondering why he resigned. In fact, yeah, I think that's quite interesting that he was in place for less than a year.
yes,
Um,
and I have a feeling it has something to do with either the monies that were going back and forth between the Visitors Bureau and the foundation, or maybe it's an and or more of an and is the purchase of the Elks Club and the money and the banking that went on with that, because that's still very questionable. We've not
extremely.
we've not resolved all that, and that may be, well, what confuses me is in the paper, Nancy says she paid cash for that building. Of course, she paid an exorbitant amount for it. Uh, but then it's tied up. Well, the Elks Club, not Musselwhite, is tied up in another loan immediately. So, did they pay cash for that building and then leverage that in a new mortgage with the condo building? It's
Well,
just the squirrely. None of it makes sense. It's not written clearly. And then at some point, I mean, why would you pay $600,000, $650,000 for a building that's only worth maybe, well, right now it's only assessed at a value of 140,000. I mean,
And it was less than 100,000 when it was actually purchased for the 650. And that's actually one of my questions. Yeah.
Tell me
So
more
I
about that. Talk, speak to that more. What are your questions?
well, the fact that somebody was paid 650,000 for a building that was worth less than 100,000, the numbers don't add up. I want to know why. Maybe there's valid reasons for it, but we should know the reasons, not just everybody just accepts that as normal behavior, because that's not normal behavior.
Well, the same thing happened over when they bought the condo. They bought
Exactly.
a $400,000 property for $750,000. It doesn't
Um,
add up.
and in other countries, they don't agree to mortgage terms and conditions on removable furniture and furnishings and paintwork. And
Normally here they don't either.
so that's bizarre. I find that bizarre that the bank loan was agreed with those items included.
I mean, you
Uh,
might get built-ins, because you can get your cabinetry and stuff included in your mortgage, in a building mortgage. But we don't even know if it was a builder's mortgage. We don't know. There's no transparency, so we don't even know what the agreement was. And the board doesn't at this point because it's a new board for the most part. There are a couple of carryovers, and it's interesting. The carryovers that are still on the board are the ones that gave her hell back then and asked for transparency. I find that I love that. I think that's brilliant. But
Hopefully, it changes things going forward now that
I
we've
I
got new,
think I
new
mean,
people.
more and more members are demanding transparency, and her going over the budget this year and calling that normal. She went over what? She went over by over $60,000 in the hole. And it seems to be there's a habit of that. I know that over at the foundation, they've operated in the red over and over and over. I think just about every year. And so I question her management of money and her management of contracts, um that she doesn't know how much money she has that she can spend. She just spends and spends and spends. And so the same thing applies to that building. you know I mean, what was it with the audio visual? Do you remember how much that whole package was when they built that?
I don't recall reading about that. I just recall reading, but I don't think it can be verified. But I just recall reading in a blog that an extra $20,000 worth of AV equipment were installed less than a year after they moved into the building, and yet the building had supposedly all this state of the art furnishings, AV, etc.,
Yeah, that was like
installed
two hundred fifty
before they
thousand
moved
dollars of
in
state of the art that isn't working.
in 2011. And then less than a year later, they approved a budget line of 20 grand for an upgrade less than a year later. And now, as you're pointing out, it's not working. So I have
Well, I
questions
wonder if it's not
about that.
working or if she just has it turned off because, they have somebody on retainer to maintain that stuff. I mean, they've got two flat screen TVs. Okay, maybe the 2011 audio visual, the audio doesn't necessarily compute to the and translate over into the new TV systems. They're just Vizios, I think. They're just flat screens. You pick them up at Walmart for $100 each. But
Well,
what
that's
is
fair enough, because I mean, that was back in 2011.
yeah, but
But
all you got to do is
there,
go buy some $99. You can go
that
buy
was part of the loan.
yeah, yeah, you can go buy inexpensive standalones that are very sturdy. I mean, I use one all the time that they
Hmm.
could be using for everybody there. I think it's a case of because I go back to so here's another story. Okay, story time. So
Yeah,
there was a
go
person
ahead.
who sat on the board that Nancy had a disagreement with, and she had him removed from the board. His name was Harvey Myrick. And Harvey, she didn't like Harvey because he was asking for transparency. So I don't know if he was either removed or he just, when his term ended, he wasn't renewed. And it doesn't matter because she didn't want him there. So the very next board meeting, he came and he went and sat in the boardroom in a chair up along the wall, not at the table, but along the wall. It's an open meeting. We're a sunshine state, so you're supposed to have open access. Well, then she didn't like him there. So the next meeting when he came in, there were no extra chairs or in the room. So he went in like the kitchen area or someplace. I don't know where he went. He went somewhere and he drug up a chair from another office and came and sat in the boardroom. Well, she didn't like that either. So the next month, there all the offices and everything else was locked up, so he couldn't get a chair. So he drug up one of the wingback chairs, the armchairs from the foyer into the room and sat
Whoa.
down. And she was not happy, but it's supposed to be an open meeting, and she doesn't like it.
I
I
mean,
just
if
felt
she had a problem with him, as in she felt, if she had thought that he was harassing her personally, she should have called the cops, but she didn't. So
well, because
her
she
way of
couldn't.
dealing with it was,
She's a public figure. He wasn't
yeah.
threatening, and it's an open meeting, and we're a sunshine state. He wasn't doing anything wrong. She just didn't like it that he was there, and that
So
he
she
was.
dealt with it in a very passive aggressive way. I mean, that's quite just, it's quite disturbing
Well, that's
listening
quite
about her.
passive
Sorry.
aggressive seems to be her forte. But
So, but one of just yeah, the whole thing about the so-called public meetings, which are not public at all, really needs to be challenged by someone at the next board meeting, even because that's just terrible. You should be able to hear what's going on, or they need to sort out the audio, or they need to allow people into the room. End
true.
of.
But transparency is not her thing to do. So um
Yeah, because that's another question I have is why is there a loan? Why did they manage to get a loan taken out on the Welcome Center? I
I,
thought that was a gift.
I do not understand how they took out a loan that is far greater than, I mean, well, okay, so two things happened. This is what I do know. They wanted to take out the loan for the full 750 and they couldn't get it because the appraisal wasn't equal to the to what they were expected to what they were had agreed to pay to Castle Condominiums. Notice Castle Condominiums. Whose name is that? Mark
Yeah.
Castleberry is the owner, of which she's now told the board she didn't know that at the time, which is a bald-faced lie. It's right on the is right on the contract where they made the purchase. It's also on the name that's listed with the at the courthouse. And he's he's the main signatory in addition to Ronnie West, who's the condo's agent of record. Anyways, so the next piece of that is she then they couldn't get that loan. So DeWitt Hicks allegedly told them, and this should be in the record, I'm guessing, in the minutes, he said that he would get another appraiser. Well, this was before Mississippi changed their appraisal methodologies. So back then you could go get another appraiser. And so he went and got an appraiser who was more friendly to their quote needs. And so he got the money they got the money they wanted because they got the appraisal they wanted, which valued it at $750,000. So what's your thought on that?
Well, to me, that's just corruption at its finest. As an outsider looking in on that sort of thing, it's, to me, reading the first time I read it, my jaw dropped. And I was just like, this is complete and total corruption, misuse of finances. I believe that the attorneys at a law firm had to repay their fee. And I think that was tied up with this loan as well, because one of the attorneys at that law firm was serving on the board. I mean, there's one word to sum it up: incestuous.
Yeah, it's a bit of nepotism going on there, isn't it?
I'd really like to know, though, why the Tennessee Welcome Center has got a loan on it currently. It's a 40,000 plus loan.
It's not clear to me unless they took a loan. Did they take a loan on it to do renovations and repairs? I don't know. I think that's a good one to explore next. I think that's something we should.
Yeah, I have big questions about that because I mean that place was gifted to MDOT, and if it's got a loan taken out on it and they fail to pay that loan, who gets possession of that
MDOT.
building? Is
MDOT.
it
It automatically goes back to MDOT if we ever go in default or abandonment.
right? So then the bank would have to get their money back from MDOT rather than CCHF or the CCBB.
Well, what's
And another
interesting,
question, talking of CCHF, is there is an employee there. They have employed somebody at the moment.
I think that's Nancy, but I don't know because she was an employee. She was doubly employed, and then they said you couldn't do that anymore. And
Correct.
then I noticed that on the new budget, there's a budget line for what, $31,000 for an employee.
No, it's $3,000 in payroll taxes. And it
Okay.
has been paid in 2023, and there's a projected figure for the payroll tax, which again is approximately $3,000.
Well,
And I,
there's a salary line in there too that I thought I saw for 31 plus retirement bennies being paid like into a private retirement account that had, of course, it'd have to have matching funds, but there was still uh a retirement annuity marked in there.
right, can't recall seeing that. It was just more the payroll taxes that I noticed, which would probably equate to somebody being paid over 10K per annum. But also, where's the health insurance, vision insurance, any of those sorts of benefits that would come with employing someone?
Well, I assumed if it's considered part-time, they wouldn't have to provide those, or if the person was already insured over at the visitors bureau, they
Well,
wouldn't
I thought she
require
was
additional health
I
care.
thought she wasn't allowed to be employed by CCHF
I
and
did
that she
too,
agreed
but
to be a volunteer, which
that's what I understood, but it remains to be seen. I mean, that's what the board's ruling was from the CVB.
so
So,
again, it's something that I'm asking questions about. Again, there could be a logical explanation for all this, and maybe they've changed their minds and they are paying her, but it would be nice to see that out in the
well,
public
see,
domain.
I go back to the ethics decision. I mean,
Yeah,
that whole ethics decision was pretty clear. It's, I mean, besides the board calling it double dipping, which they did, but it's the idea that there can be some crossover. For instance, the foundation, to my knowledge, I mean, there's a volunteer office, but there's no office for a full-time person.
right.
Um, the that building, there's no, I mean, there's very little office equipment or stuff to support the office. So are they double dipping and going back and forth and they're using the equipment over at the CVB? That adds wear and tear, and they were told distinctly that it was unethical for them to remain in operation crossing over. So to me, there's some additional ethical questions, but there's also financial questions. So where if the director is working, if the CVB's director, Nancy Carpenter, is working for the foundation, where does she plan her bum when she does the work? Is she over there and kicking the volunteers out? Is she using the CVB's office and telephones and letterhead and all that? What there's just
Well, yeah,
there's so much that's just intertwined. Again, it's an incestuous relationship. You are absolutely, I mean, now we're going from the macro level to the micro level, and that costs money. So
yeah,
either the foundation has a budget and they stick to it, or they don't.
yeah. So yeah, it's all too fuzzy. To me, it's not transparent enough. It needs to be either become incredibly transparent, or we just have to assume that people are hiding things.
Well, as people in the family say, the math ain't mathing.
Correct. Correct. Oh, talking of that, I've just remembered. What about the missing checks?
I don't know. All I know is they blamed it on if they were stolen. That was, and apparently it was a couple of years ago. So I'm not sure why she brought it up in that in that meeting in her yearly review. If it sounds like it happened like 3 years ago. So I didn't understand. I mean, of course, she brought up being a twirler at Mississippi State in that meeting too. But whatever.
Right.
I just think it was more obfuscation. I think she was just saying, well, they were asking uncomfortable questions about money, and I think she was trying to infer that it could go back all the way to those missing checks. But that's
Sorry.
not how that works.
No, and they should have been reported and they should have been traced and there should have been a block put on them and all those things. And I
And they
bet you
were.
that's happened. No
And they
police
were.
report.
So to me, that's case closed. That's a I mean that's a there was nothing there for her to like make the link. It to me it was just a case of her trying to obfuscate and trying to cast doubt and say, oh well, I don't know where that why you can't find anything. Maybe it's like the missing checks; they just disappeared.
Bizarre.
Total hogwash. But one thing I've noticed is, and you see it in the press and you see it in action, is when a question is about transparency and it's uncomfortable, she diverts or she out and out lies, which is very disturbing to watch.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really a hinky thing to do. But we're never without ethical issues, apparently. Did you know at one point,
So,
and
yeah.
this will make you giggle. At one point, she had a car that was provided by the CVB for her to use for business.
Right.
Her husband at the
Fair
time
enough.
was still alive, and apparently he had some significant vision issues and was legally blind. Anyways, the paper reports that they took her car away because, well, she had her husband on the car insurance and had him on the payroll as her driver.
What? The payroll?
She had,
Maybe that's the explanation for the CCHF payroll taxes. Maybe he's still on payroll.
well, the man's been deceased for a couple of years now.
Well, that would
Could
be
be her
kind of
daughter.
illegal.
She's put her daughter on payroll off and on for various events. And she took the daughter apparently. I mean, and I don't have any actual verification of this. I mean, I've seen the fact that she was on the payroll, but I don't know about her taking off from her job. But apparently she took some days off work to work an event for her mother, and she was on
Yeah.
payroll.
Now
And she
again, if she was the best person for the job and it was advertised and all the interviews and all the rest of it and it was all above board that way, then fair enough. But she took time off her work during a school year.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't really take time off work for other things during a school year,
Well,
maybe during the
I mean,
summer.
you can take. I mean, you can take leave, but it was. It's just the fact that the nepotism of putting your own daughter on the payroll for an event where you
It's
could
kind
go,
of bizarre.
when you could advertise. There's plenty of people who need that. Could make. They weren't even given the opportunity. That it's the
No,
lack.
that's
It's the
the
lack of
problem.
ability of opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, like say, if she was the best person to do that particular job and it had been independently ascertained during an interview process, application and interview process, then fair enough. But
Correct. And this daughter is allegedly on record in the court system as saying she couldn't serve her duty on a jury pool. And when asked why, she didn't say, "Oh, I'm a classroom teacher and I need to be in my classroom," and that it would have,
which would have been
they
a
have to
valid
pay
reason.
sub pay, which would be a valid reason. I think it might not have
Yeah.
gotten her off, but it would have been a valid reason. They would have taken it into consideration. But instead, she said that she needed to be at the CVB and cover for her mother because no one else could do it. Well, she's not an employee of the CVB, and there are two employees who can keep running the office if
That's bizarre.
I mean it's just the hubris of it and that it just keeps going. You know, I mean I don't like to bring in family members, but she has created this situation where her family members are now open to scrutiny. And that's not okay
Correct.
either. I mean,
No,
as a
no.
mother, I'm going, what in the heck? As a citizen, I'm going, holy cow, what in the heck? It's just
That's
it's just the
yeah,
bizarreness
it's
of
the
it.
deceit. It's the deceit that's running through all this and the lies.
Correct. I agree on that.
I can't stand. And the misrepresentation makes me wonder if she's misrepresented her qualifications way back in the first place. Is she
Mm,
even qualified to do the job?
that's a good point. That remains. I mean, she sits on every board I can think of, but a lot. We know that she's bought her way on at least one board. What's to say she hadn't bought her way on some others?
Oh, well, there's membership fees, not just for the Mississippi Hills National Area Board, but there's membership fees for, I think, two other boards in that list.
Well, it's not disclosed, is it? None of it was disclosed. If Quinn hadn't pushed, um,
Mm.
he wouldn't have found out that she paid to have a premium membership with the Mississippi Heritage Hills, so she essentially bought her seat on the board.
And she's bought her seat on a couple more boards because they're definitely there. Well, she didn't do it. See the it's on the budget spreadsheet. Membership fees. One of them's for M
Is it
MS
MDAH?
DOM,
Uh,
and it's an organization that was oh,
what's it called?
forgotten.
What's
MSDOM. I think it's 4,000. I think
DOM
that's
or DOT?
no, not DOT, DOM.
I wonder what the M is.
It's anyway, it's an organization that's been set up by that. Oh, she's head of CCBB. Sorry, not CCBB. The Hattiesburg Convention Bureau.
Oh, there's
Darcy, her
CVB.
last name is. Well, she's set up a new organization, and I tried to find out a bit more about it, but I couldn't find it listed in it. And it didn't have any 990s, didn't have any non-profit things
Could you see
for
what
that
year it was
organization.
organized?
Well, I think it's an organization that's doubling up with another organization to do
Oh,
with tourism. And I don't see the point in it actually existing.
ah, another membership.
I'll send you details about it so you can
Good, so
investigate it a bit
I can
further
dig some
because
more. We need. I think there's another source of digging. I also
it's a bit
want
difficult sometimes to do research from overseas because sometimes you're not allowed onto websites like Mississippi Secretary of State. You're not allowed, you're not authorized to have access to this website, and it's all because I'm overseas.
okay.
So
Well, that's no harm, no foul. I'll look that up. But that
sometimes you're allowed in and sometimes you're not. It depends whether it recognizes
well,
you as being overseas or not.
in Scotland, you're such scurrilous people. We have to keep an eye on you.
That's right. So
So in where do you think we should dig into next? The Tennessee Williams house and the loans.
I'm interested in what those loans are for and why it was necessary to take that loan out. And then the fact that apparently, from what you were saying, and I'm assuming you've got it in writing that she tried to give away the Tennessee Williams building.
Oh, it's in minutes.
It's in minutes. Wow.
Yes.
But not only that, the fact that she was giving it away, she was going to try and give it back to M. Dot, who
Yeah, no,
gifted it in the
she
first
was
place.
mad because so
With a
what happened?
loan on it. It had a loan on it.
I know. Maybe
Why
she
would
thought it would just
that's
go
not a
away.
gift? That's
So,
not a gift.
well, no one says she's a good manager.
Well, no.
So here's what happened. So the Tennessee Williams, they'd gotten the ethics ruling that said they needed to no longer have anything to do. They were the same board. They would literally go, okay, today we're the CVB board, and at 10 o'clock we'll turn off the CVB discussion and we'll put on our foundation hats. And so the same board was both. Well, that was fine in the foundation's infancy. And but after a few years and it got under its feet, some new members of the board started questioning the ethics of what they were doing because they'd already cut her funding for being over there. She was considered double dipping. So now they said, we're going to appoint another board and we're going to go to the state and we're going to ask for an ethics ruling. So they immediately appointed a new board, of which now there's only 3 people, and there's 2 chairs open. So we'll see what happens there, who joins that.
Mm.
But then so they had so then Nancy wasn't happy with the fact that she was told that she couldn't go over there, she couldn't be part of their meetings. She needed to let it be completely isolated and on its own. And she wasn't happy because and a little of it is within good right. If the CVB is the one that gives the money for the budget over the Tennessee Williams, then there has to be some sort of connection where the two talk to each other about expectations and all that. And so while that was in limbo, they said, okay, you can go over there, but we're not going to pay you to do that. Well, she was mad about that. And Joe Beckett asked her, he was like, this is, you being part of that is totally unethical. And that was when she said that he was trying to get rid of her, which was not the truth at all. He was just asking difficult questions and explaining that, you can't do that. So then the next thing that happens is she comes back to the meeting and she says, well, if we don't have any oversight, let's just give the building back to MDOT. I've already had conversations with the people at MDOT to tell them that we're open to giving the building back to them, and they're eager to have it. And
she wasn't authorized to do that.
No, she was not. And that was exactly what the board challenged her on. And so she got angrier. And so that was when she said, and Joe was like, you can't do that because now people in the community are going to be furious that you gave away something that we've put so much time and effort into. And that's kind of the iconic building when you drive into town. It's the first building you see that's an older, an antebellum or Victorian era building. And it's a very, it's clearly a welcome center. It's got a nice green space. So So she decided that he was trying to get rid of her because he didn't agree with her. And he was just like, you're not giving that building away. And of course, the board said, no, you're not giving that building away and you're not authorized. And who said you could even have those conversations? Well, she got pissed off because somebody was putting the brakes on her and holding her accountable. And yeah. And so that was the end of the giving the Tennessee Williams away. But it was just it was the hubris of no accountability, and she was just going to do it because she's kind of spiteful.
I'm getting that impression. Absolutely.
Well, the other thing that I'm digging into more is, and I know you've seen this. Tennessee Williams is a kind of could be a huge draw. It used to be a huge draw when it first started. The Tennessee Williams tribute would bring in people from New York City and, Chicago and places like that to come to the play and to take part in the celebrations and see where he was born. And there's quite a following of people who are scholars and aficionados and people who appreciate Tennessee Williams. Yeah. And so, most of the money ends up going to New Orleans because there's a huge event down there. Well, we had, of course, that birthday celebration, so people came. Well, it's still a big draw, or could be. However, the person who was part of the founding members who created this wanted to hold Nancy accountable for the marketing that she promised. Because she's good about promising in-time marketing, but she doesn't deliver. And so to this day, Nothing goes. I mean, if I hadn't raised a stink, it never would have been on the website. It still didn't work. It still went to nowhere. Broken links right and left. And then there's nothing on the Facebook page. And while we're on the subject, there's not been anything on the Facebook page since June 29th. I mean, today's, there's Burns Bottom celebration. Granted, it's not a CVB celebration, but it could bring tourist dollars to town. What, you know, anything that's not her idea gets absolutely no time, none. And even the ones that are her idea are done last minute and, pardon me, half-assed.
Yeah, because to me, I thought a convention, a visitors bureau would be advertising, would actually advertise on their websites the other what's going, the other events that
Community
are happening in
things.
town.
Yeah.
Maybe not actually spending money on, but putting stuff on their website and their Facebook page doesn't cost that much. And
It doesn't
that
cost
would be
anything to put
like
anything on your Facebook page. You just do it.
a passive advertising to get people to come into Columbus, but she doesn't even do that, or she doesn't even delegate that task to someone else. I mean, that would be a start if she delegated. If she's got personal issues happening for whatever reason, she could delegate that task to a part-time employee and maybe give them some extra hours.
You would think. I would think that if we spent, over $220,000 on marketing and advertising, that there would be at least a Facebook agreement in there somewhere that they had to put, because I mean, I work for a nonprofit and we put up, I think our Facebook person puts up, the agreement is four posts a week that are just, basic information about what we do, supporting other organizations. And then anytime there's something else, then they put those posts up. And so we end up having, I don't know, 6 or 7 posts a week, and we're not even spending $200 a month.
Exactly.
So it's
And I've
not
seen those posts.
it's not expensive. Or goodness gracious, go get you an intern in marketing at either Mississippi State or MUW.
True. Give
I
them
mean,
good
they don't
good
even have to come in the
experience.
building. All you do is they go share this off of someone, this is going on. Go look at Main Street's, go share their material so that we show goodwill to Main Street. But she's not going to do that because she's in an adversarial role for some reason with Main Street.
Which is bizarre because, I mean, the mission of the CCBB, in my opinion, is to attract visitors to Columbus.
Correct.
It's not to criticize other people and be resentful of other people for getting more than your organization gets and all that stuff.
Well, Main
if you're
Street
putting your
operates on a
interests,
Main Street operates on a far smaller budget. I mean, significantly smaller. And I look at the things they accomplish just in their promotional and the management of their advertising and their social media. And I'm just going, wow, why are we paying millions of dollars a year to the CVB and they haven't hosted a single convention? I've been, I guess, in the last 3 years. I mean, there's no there's no ROI. I don't know where the return on the investment is, and there's certainly no marketing going on. All I see is everywhere I turn more adversarial relationships.
yeah, it's not putting Columbus first, that's for sure.
No,
That this organization doesn't appear to be putting Columbus first. And some of the beneficiaries of the grants are not putting Columbus first. They're putting themselves first, and they're getting resentful of other people who have nonprofit organizations and are also getting grants. And that's ridiculous. I mean, their whole aim should be getting Columbus on the map. And they're not going to do that if they're going to fight amongst each other and be resentful.
correct. And some of the stuff, it's like, oh, so one of the things she did, our poor arts council, I mean, it never has enough funding anyways. Bless their hearts. They try so hard. And it takes up this big corner. It's there again, a very visible, should be an attractive place to bring in visitors. And people come from out of town to see some of the art. Well, because the facility is so underfunded, um, and it's becoming more and more difficult for the director there to continue to, support their mission in the way he would like to see it supported. And so they had this event. I can't remember what it was called. It was like I don't know, Tours and Legends or something like that. And so it was always their event that they put on, and they'd put it on supported somewhat by the CVB.
Right.
Well,
Good.
in an article I read, she just went and trademarked, she got a Mississippi trademark on their event's name, meaning
I read
they now had
about
to
that.
come to her for permission to use that trademark name to run that event that they used as a fundraiser every year.
Yeah, I read about that. That's really bizarre. Again, to me, that's passive aggressive
Well,
and
she
bizarre
did the same with
behavior.
other things. Some local business people wanted to run a festival that was called Taste of Columbus, because they had Best of Burgers or something like that through Main Street, and they said, "Oh, well, let's broaden it so there's more than burgers, because we're not known for
Yeah,
burgers here. We're known for catfish and shrimp and grits and
sure.
barbecue,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff." So they said, "Well, let's call it Taste of Columbus." Well, they went to use it. She'd already trademarked the name. Told them they couldn't use it. Now I don't know what
Wow.
became of that, if they, but I mean, why would you get, why would you care? Why would you do that?
That's it's just very, very, very strange.
And
Very
then if you
strange.
had it, why would you ever care if the other group used it, if it was to bring people to Columbus and it attracted tourism? Don't you think you'd support it?
Yeah, because that would be fulfilling the primary mission statement of several organizations in Columbus and should certainly not exclude the CBB.
No kidding.
Gosh,
It's all just it all circles back to the same thing, and that's the director. And for some reason, they must not like their job. I don't know why they keep reapplying for it every year, but the and they seem to have this presumption that she has a presumption that she's going to get it every year and she's entitled to it. It used to be a 3-year contract. Now it was last year it was a 1 year, and this year the board is so annoyed it's 6 months and she's done. So we only have 6 more months of this, but maybe, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't trust her.
I think she reapplies for the job each time because it's a cash cow.
I think well, she doesn't reapply. There's an assumption she'll get it.
And up till now, she's got it.
It's never opened up for um for application to anyone else. So we don't know if anyone else could do a better job, or there's it
Well,
there's it's just they look at her whether she should be retained or not. And before, she's gotten a rubber stamp, and this year she didn't.
yeah, it
And the
just,
compromise was 6 months and she's done. So where does she go next? I say we have to watch the foundation. And I think she'll spend the next 6 months siphoning off as much money as she can to feed over into the foundation, because the CVB funds the foundation. And by doing that, if she goes over to the foundation as a full-time employee, she's got to be funded, and she's not going to go without, a sweet deal. I mean, she's making 110. Well, this year she'll get 55 because she's only working 6 months, but she still gets $1,000 a month for her vehicle.
well, I just, I don't know. I certainly think it was a good idea that the 6 months isn't renewed, and then they need to find someone else who has new ideas, new input, a new generation.
Well, my biggest concern is right now, they have a really good treasurer. He's very solid. He's a businessman. He's well versed in how a business is run, and they've
Good.
put some significant checks and balances that she can no longer make any contracts without him being involved, or board approval. She can't write. All the checks are supposed to be written and approved by two people now. She has a credit card. I sure hope they put a stop to that, or she has to have permission before she puts a thing on it, as well as the debit card. Did you know she says they don't have online access to their account? Can you believe that in
That's
2023?
I mean,
I think
in
she just didn't
America,
sign up for it, or she's trying not to keep him from looking.
oh yeah, she's completely blocking his access, deliberately blocking
Yeah.
his access. There's no
So
way. I mean, you can't turn around and say that other countries are miles ahead with their online banking on
I bank
miles
at
ahead
that
of
bank.
America,
I bank at that bank. They have online checking, and it's just I don't think she signed up for it, or she doesn't want to
deliberately,
give him the access. Because I see a
deliberately.
lot of debit purchases that are not necessarily all on the check ledger.
Wow.
And there's no credit card. There's nothing on for the. There is a credit card. I do know that she has one, a company credit card, but I don't see a ledger on that.
Well, I mean, that needs to be reconciled on a monthly basis. You can't just, you know, you can't just spend willy nilly on a credit card. You actually have to get that approved.
Well,
Normal
the
businesses.
previous treasurer was her friend, who's now immediately said, well, I haven't felt comfortable about writing checks for things I haven't seen the receipts on or the invoices and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just double signing checks. I mean, she pretty much turned around and stabbed her friend right in the back, right in the middle of the meeting. So, I found that very interesting. Um, but a
And
little,
a friend shouldn't have been countersigning checks anyway.
well, she's been on the board since, I can't remember, if it's 2013 or 2015. She's been on the board for a long time as the treasurer.
But if she was a friend of the executive director, she shouldn't have been countersigning the checks.
No
That's a
kidding. But, little wink, wink, nudge, nudge is, pretty common in small towns, unfortunately. But there again, it goes back to that. It all goes back to transparency.
yeah, exactly.
Well,
Um,
I think this week, let's see what newspaper articles we can find on the Tennessee Williams all alone. See if we can find anything.
yeah,
I'm
because
gonna
that kind of just popped up, and I was like, "What?"
I'm gonna look if you'll send me the stuff on the Mississippi DOM. I'll Department of Marketing. What is Department of, I don't know
I
what is.
can't remember what it stands for. I just remember it's on one of the budget spreadsheets that
Oh,
it's
good.
a like this membership fee, several grand worth of membership fee. Not as much as the Mississippi Hills one, but yeah, it's a membership fee, and I can't find the existence of the actual organization.
Well,
So,
if you'll send me that little bit you did find, I'll go dig because I can go on the state site, and then
mm,
we'll dig in and see what else is going on. I'm also curious about the relationship or lack of relationship between the Tennessee Williams Foundation and the Tennessee Williams Tribute Group, or I mean,
right,
there's no Facebook page for the Tennessee Williams Welcome Center. It's just the CVB. There's
right.
if they're two separate entities,
It should be two
they don't
separate.
have a separate web presence. Everything is all run through the CVB,
Right.
which
Mm,
begs even more questions. So I think that's something else we can dig into this week and see what we can find.
totally.
Okay. Well, that's another day, another dollar. Uh, anything else you want to add to this before we close up today? And
Looking forward to seeing what else we can find, and maybe would be good to know in the future if the board ever did get access to the bank accounts.
yeah, that's a real good question. Did they ever get online bank access? Um, and credit card,
Yeah, what's going on with that credit card?
the debit card and the credit card and the automatic drafts.
Yep,
Um,
transparency.
Well, and one of the things is I want to know she has a membership to a local golf course because she's got the green tag on her car. It is the CVB paying for that? Are they paying for her monthly? Because you have a monthly membership at a country club. Even if it's a
Yep.
social membership, you still have to pay your membership, which is probably like $250, $300. And then you have a mandatory food bill. So even if you don't eat out there or use up your credits, you still have to pay that bill every month.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not a cheap enterprise to belong to. one of the things
Does
is
that come under networking on the
that's what I
budget
wonder.
spreadsheet?
Oh, there's a good
Yeah.
question. Is it under networking? Well, we had questions. Is that networking like a membership, or is that networking like someone who manages the network and the infrastructure of all the computers in the building? It's not clear.
Again, lack of transparency.
Good question. Well, I always laugh because every time I start this, the movie, or the play musical, the Music Man. I don't know if you remember, Professor Howard Hill comes into town, and he gets all the parents to order all these musical instruments because they're going to get the kids to um, learn how to play music in a band. And he's
Right.
a flim flam man. He leaves with all the money. There's no instruments, and so we
Yeah.
live on the river, and so I always go Trouble in River City. It reminds me of that song because there's so much flim flam going on.
Yeah. Gee.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. This was great. It's nice to be able to be transparent in our own work so that people can see
Yep.
how we do this and what we're looking for. And, we're not always correct, but
That's true. Possibly, yes.
we dig and dig and dig until we can get to the truth. I mean, we do have to speculate some, but it's funny how much of our speculation has been spot on.
Well, yes, exactly. And
And then
I'm quite sure though, again, if they were transparent in the first place, we wouldn't be making assumptions and making mistakes possibly and things like that. So yeah, that's all they got to do is be transparent and
if
tell the
they're
truth.
just be transparent. It's just a case of we're just going to keep digging till we find the facts. It's all a matter of public record. Everything we have looked at has been a matter of public record.
Yep.
So, keep shining the sunlight on this mess, because, sunlight is the best disinfectant. I know I keep
Yep.
saying that, but it's become my mantra. Well, thank you again, and until our next meeting,
All the best.
all the best. Take care.
See ya. Bye.